Hey everyone, welcome back to Mason Zero MTG. My name is Mason, and today we're going to start a new series on the channel. I think this is going to be a lot of fun because it involves looking at custom cards that people have made. So we're taking a look at r/CustomMagic on Reddit, which is a subreddit self-described as cards for Redditors by Redditors. So basically people make custom Magic cards, share them on here, and people can comment on them, upvote them, things like that. And it's just a lot of fun. People like creating custom Magic cards, so it's a good activity. I myself have created a lot. I've posted a few on here, but I've also designed a lot of cards on my own. There's a video on the channel that's been getting a couple comments lately, which inspired me to start doing this series, which is my custom Skyrim set. I've gotten some good feedback on that. Generally, cards seem well liked and the set well designed. So I'm going to be offering my opinion as a bit of an amateur card designer on some of these custom cards. So I want bad cards to be included on this, so I'm just going to go ahead and click on new and see the latest cards, and we're greeted by a great one. We got Warm Crow, which I assume is supposed to be going off of Storm Crow. At first glance, this card actually seems fine. It's a common, and you know, I'm not always sure on the rarities on this. Some people just put something, so I might kind of ignore rarity, but this does feel like a common. 1 and a blue for a 1/2 bird with flying. Pay 1 and a red and it gets +1/+0 until end of turn. I think that's hilarious and flavorful. That's a fair fire breathing ability for a common, 2 mana. I think this card's perfect. Brave Goose. So it's a 2/2 for 2. It's a bird. During combat phase, Brave Goose can't leave the battlefield or be phased out. It can't become a non-creature permanent. Its controller can't be changed, and it can't be regenerated, and it can't be removed from combat. That's a lot. I think this card might be sort of just a funny joke, but it's still pretty great. I think this effect makes sense. I think that's fair, but it could be reworded. So during combat phase, it should be during the combat phase, or just during combat. So Brave Goose can't leave the battlefield or be phased out. I think that part's fine. Although it should say effects can't cause Brave Goose to leave the battlefield or be phased out. That might be how that's supposed to be said. If this was a modern card just coming out now, it wouldn't say regenerated, because that is not something they use in Magic, so that wouldn't be there. Yeah, there's probably some more succinct way to say this. Perhaps some reminder text saying that its state can't be changed. I'm actually not sure on the wording there, because it'd be pretty complex, so let's go on to the next one. Caller Alana. 7 blue red. Alright, this better be good. It's a 3/3 legendary creature of wizard. Okay, it has Eminence, which is when it's in your command zone, so this is obviously designed for commander. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell with converted mana cost 5 or greater, while Caller Alana is on the battlefield or in your command zone, you get an experience counter. Okay, interesting. When Caller Alana enters the battlefield, create a 5/5 red dragon creature token with flying for each experience counter you have. Okay, this seems fair. Actually, I feel like it's more than fair. I think that mana cost could likely be reduced. Casting an instant or sorcery with mana cost 5 or greater is a tall order. This does nothing for quite a while, and then you can't cast it. Good payoff when you do cast it. I'm kind of curious what the comments are on here. Okay, well, first of all, there's no such thing as your command zone. Fair enough. Yeah, the mana cost of this card seems a bit too high. Oh, okay, that's fair. The mana cost is fine. People would flicker her anyway. Well, there's a good way to fix that. Instead of when Caller Alana enters the battlefield, you would say when she enters the battlefield, if she was cast from your command zone, you get tokens. That would be the way to do that. I think that would balance that, and then you could probably cost reduce this a little bit. And yeah, this weird color indicator thing is strange. That doesn't need to be there, obviously. But yeah, good base for a card. I like it. Alright, what do we have here? Featherfly Sprite. 1 hybrid green-white for 0/1 creature insect fairy with defender and flying. Featherfly Sprite gets +0/+1 for each basic forest you control. 1 and a green, Featherfly Sprite loses flying until end of turn. Okay, I'm not quite sure what this is. It's interesting. I don't think it needs to be white because it has no interaction with white. The activated ability is green, it calls for forests. Defender and Flying I think are fine. I mean, Flying's a little weird for green, but I think this is fine. It's an insect. The whole loses Flying thing is a little weird. I feel like that's kind of situational if someone casts like a Plummet or something like that. Interesting design. I think out of context of the set it would be in, it doesn't make much sense. But I think it's okay. Alright, what do we have here? Harsh Enlightenment. Red, red, white for an instant. Exile a target spell. Harsh Enlightenment deals 2 damage to target player or planeswalker. Interesting. I don't think that really works. White has a little bit of countering, but it's very specific on spells that target you. Exiling a spell isn't something that red or white can do. The damage is fine, but I really don't think there's any way to deal with this. I think copying the spell or redirecting it or something might be okay. Maybe if it was more like a deflecting palm effect, but I don't know. This does not work in these colors. All right, Canonize. 2 and 2 white for a sorcery. As an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice a creature. Create a token that's a copy of that creature, except it's an artifact. It's not a creature. Huh, interesting. So this is obviously very dependent on the set that it's in or a specific deck or some sort of other context, because it's very specific. I guess it's fine. You get an additional enter the battlefield effect, but it's not a creature anymore. I think that, this card is templated fine. It's probably costed fine given the context, if this is relevant, but I don't really see the point of this card. It's almost like making a creature a little safer. Depending on what colors you're playing against or what kind of deck you're playing against, it might be harder for people to remove an artifact than a creature. So making it no longer a creature, but still getting a static effect. If it's a Lord buffing your team or something like that. Still seems a little expensive for doing something like that though, so I don't like it. One Man's Trash is what they're calling this one, and the card is called Trash Pit. Cost X and 2 generic for an artifact. When Trash Pit enters the battlefield, exile the top X cards of your library face down. When Trash Pit is destroyed, discard your hand, then put all cards exiled by Trash Pit into your hand. Pay 1 to exile the top card of your library face down. Pay 4 to destroy Trash Pit. Okay, so this is kind of a Bomat Courier type of card. It's interesting. It's less interesting than Bomat Courier just because Bomat Courier can attack. It's a good card. I'm not sure if something like this necessarily would be, but the fact you can choose when to destroy it is nice. So it's sort of a weird delayed card draw. I think it's okay. I think that this part needs to be reworded when Trash Pit is destroyed. It should be, when Trash Pit leaves the battlefield, probably. So I think that would fix it. But yeah, this is fine. It's kind of a funny card. I'm sure someone could figure out a way to abuse it, but I feel like that's fair. Maybe increasing the cost of this would be good. 1 is a little cheap for essentially drawing a card. So I would say make that 2, even 3, and it'd be fair. Imbued Chargestone. 1 in a blue for an artifact. Whenever an artifact you control becomes tapped, put a charge counter on Imbued Chargestone. Remove 3 charge counters from Imbued Chargestone. Draw a card, then discard a card. You get an energy counter. Interesting. So I guess I'll think about this in the context of Kaladesh and Aether Revolt because of the charge counter thing, or an energy counter. So first of all, it's a bit confusing because we have charge counters and energy counters. So I think from a design perspective, that might get a little too confusing for what Wizards of the Coast generally likes to do. Mixing counters generally isn't something that they are fans of. So I would say that's probably not something they would love, but it could work. I think this makes sense. I don't think it's too broken. If you're in an artifact ramp sort of deck, you're gonna need a lot of charge counters, but the fact that you're looting and not just drawing is probably okay. I think this is pretty powerful, but I don't think it's broken. And none of the cards that use energy are necessarily game winning right on the spot. So if you get 1,000,000 energy, there's no card that can deal 1,000,000 damage to something with energy. So I think that's fair. All right, we have Smoldering, Natural, and Mechanical Premonition. So we have a bit of a cycle here. So they're instant sorcery, they all cost 3. So the red one is look at the top 3 cards of your library. You may cast a red instant spell with converted mana cost 1 from among them without paying its mana cost. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. I don't think that's good. I mean, it'd have to be a very specific deck. And actually, now that I see they're all kind of like that. You look at the top 3, you may put up to 1 creature card, converted mana cost 1 or less from among them onto the battlefield. This is, you may put up to 1 non-land artifact card with mana cost 1 or less from among them onto the battlefield. I think paying 3 mana for something that costs 1 and you might miss on it in a lot of cases, is not great. Yeah, the concept is cool, but the power level is much too low. I would 100% agree. I think that it's an interesting design. You know, casting souls for free is always cool, but really you're not doing much. I think maybe 2 mana, either making this cost 2 mana or making this cost 2 mana, where you get to cast something 2 mana or less, would be fine. Otherwise, it's very limited and very not good, I would say. But interesting concept, nonetheless. Yantha of Hanweir. Red, white, and black for a 3/3 legendary creature human cleric with first strike. Whenever another creature dies, put a faith counter on Yantha. Pay Mardu, remove X faith counters, put an angel, demon, or dragon creature with converted mana cost X or less from your hand onto the battlefield. Activate this ability only anytime you could cast a sorcery. Okay. I feel like this is fine. It's a legendary creature in 3 colors. And it's a 3/3 for 3 with first strike. It's fine. You know, combat is big in those colors. Whenever another creature dies, you put a counter on it. No direct interaction with killing things, but I guess, you know, combat. And these are strong removal colors, so I think that's fair. This ability, it feels fair, having to pay mana and being able, having to remove counters and activating it only as a sorcery. You know, that seems fair. This is kind of like that original commander, where you can put angels, demons, and dragons onto the battlefield for free when she attacks. I think that's fine. Flavorfully, this kind of works because Hanweir is from Innistrad, and angels, demons, and dragons are all on Innistrad, although not very many dragons, but there are a couple. You know, Mirrorwing Dragon was from Innistrad, so, you know, that works. And it works in the colors, of course. Yeah, I think this is interesting. I don't think it's too powerful. I think it's fair. Thaumaturgy. 1, a blue and a red for an instant. Draw a card. It has Escalate, which is from Innistrad as well. So you pay this cost for each mode chosen beyond the first. Choose 1 or more. Copy target spell, counter target spell unless its controller pays 2, or deal 3 damage to target creature. So this is interesting because it has an effect that happens no matter what. And then you can escalate to get more modes, which is interesting. So you draw a card no matter what, and then you can either copy a spell, counter a spell unless the controller pays 2, or deal 3 damage. All of which are perfectly fair for that cost, I feel like. You know, yeah, I think the 3 mana to draw a card and do some small effect like this seems fine. Drawing a card is usually worth 1 or 2 mana, and I think these other effects are also worth 2 mana. You know, the second one is literally Quench from the most recent set, which costs 2 mana, so having 1 tacked onto that is fine. 2 more hybrid mana, you know, you're forced to pay a color for each one, seems fair. If they actually printed this card, I think this might be a rare, or they'd add another mana for making it an uncommon, but I'm not sure. Either way, it's very close to being balanced, if not being perfectly balanced. And I love modal spells like this. All right, Crab with a Knife. This is gonna be a good one. 3 and a blue for a 0/4 creature crab. When Crab with a Knife enters the battlefield, create a colorless equipment artifact token named Knife. It has equipped creature gets +1/+0 and equip 2. Attach this artifact to Crab with a Knife. Yep, seems good. Learner's Spectacles. 4 mana artifact equipment. Equipped creature has pay 2 and tap, draw a card. Equip 2. As a common, this seems fine. You know, it's definitely going to be a really late or last pick in a draft. It's not an interesting card. I think it's fine. You know, there are weak cards in Magic, and I think this is certainly one of them. But it's fine. Alright, here we have a legendary land called Temporary Occupation. When Temporary Occupation enters the battlefield, gain control of target land until end of turn, untap that land. During that land's controller's next upkeep, they may put a land from their hand onto the battlefield. Tap to add 1 to your mana pool. Okay, this is interesting. So you get to steal a land until end of turn and use it, and then that person gets to put a land onto the battlefield, potentially, on their next upkeep. I would say this being colorless is, well, first of all, this should be the colorless symbol, not a generic one, but I think that's on the borderline of not being fair. Being colorless makes it a little more fair, but basically playing this means that you get to play 2 lands that turn almost. So you play this, get to tap it, and you get another land that you get to tap, so that seems like a pretty big advantage. Being legendary curbs that a little bit. You can only really do it once unless you have some weird land bounce effect. Every copy you play after this, once one of these is on the battlefield, is sort of not a disadvantage, but it's not necessarily an advantage because you lose the original one, but you can still tap it beforehand. So there's probably a sequence where it doesn't really make you lose out on anything. So I would question whether this should come in tapped or untapped, but I think it's an interesting design and I like the idea. Mountain Giant. It's a land creature, Mountain Giant. It's a 3/3, and the reminder text says Mountain Giant isn't a spell, it's affected by Summoning Sickness, and it has tap, add red. When Mountain Giant enters the battlefield, sacrifice it unless you pay 2 in a red. So this is obviously a Dryad Arbor sort of card. Pretty interesting design. So it has the same reminder text as Dryad Arbor, which means it is a land, not a spell. You cannot cast it, but it sort of acts like a spell because you have to pay 3 mana when it enters the battlefield. The red cannot come from it because it is affected by Summoning Sickness like a creature, so you can't tap it for mana. So this is a turn 4 play, assuming a normal sequence of playing lands. It feels semi-fair because of that. You know, Dryad Arbor is a land, and it's just a creature also. This one does make you pay a fair cost for a creature, and it's your land play for the turn. So playing a 3/3 on turn 4 seems fair. There are a lot of weird shenanigans you can get into with things like this, but I think that it makes sense. Whether it's a good design, I'm not entirely sure. I'm sure that if this was a real card, they'd want to stay away from cards like this. They probably consider Dryad Arbor a bit of a mistake, and I think this is slightly fixed, but I'm not positive on that. From what I can tell, this seems fair, and I like it. Ablaze. 1 black-red for a sorcery. Ablaze deals 3 damage to any target. If you are the chosen target, draw 2 cards. Now this is interesting. So it's a burn spell, a rather expensive one at that, but that's fine because of the alternate effect of drawing cards. So it's kind of a really bad lightning strike or lightning bolt in 2 colors, or it's sort of a worse Night's Whisper, I guess. You're sort of paying 3 life instead of 2, and you're paying 3 mana. I think it's interesting as a flexible card. I don't see anything wrong with it. So I'm going to say that I like it. I'm going to say it's good. Koz or Koze, Guild Recruiter. 2 black and 2 red for a 5/5 legendary creature demon with flying and trample. When Koze enters the battlefield, each opponent sacrifices a creature. Each opponent who sacrificed a creature with the lowest toughness loses 5 life. Each opponent who didn't sacrifice a creature loses 5 life. This seems cool. I think this is pretty fair, especially with that restrictive color cost. You know, this is very red-black, sacrificing a creature, losing life, things like that. I think this makes sense for a lot of those kind of effects. It feels very black and less red. I'm not sure if the red is necessarily needed on this card. I think having just black is fine. Either making it 4 and 2 black or 3 and 3 black. But yeah, I don't really think there's anything red about this. If it was damage instead of life, maybe, but that would probably make it a little worse. So yeah, I would say this is fine, but maybe ditch the red. Sariel, Legion Vanguard. 3, a red and a white for a 2/4 legendary creature, Angel Soldier. Flying Vigilance, Haste. Other soldier creatures you control have Myriad. At the end of combat on your turn, for each player that was dealt combat damage this turn, you may pay 2 hybrid red-white. If you do, Sariel, Legion Vanguard deals 3 damage to target creature that player controls, and you gain 3 life. Okay, there's a lot to unpack here. So a 2/4 for 5 with Flying Vigilance and Haste and all these other abilities, that seems fair. You know, not great stats for a high mana cost, but a ton of abilities, including Haste. So that seems fine. Other soldiers have Myriad. That's pretty interesting. And the next ability goes along with Myriad. So obviously made for Commander or Conspiracy, which is where Myriad came from. And this feels fine. So for each player that was dealt combat damage, you can pay 2 mana. I think that's good. So you can choose to just do it once. You can choose to do it 3 times if you did that. You know, everyone's going to be attacked if you attack with something. Maybe not everyone will be dealt combat damage, but everyone will certainly be attacked. And I think 3 damage is fine. You know, you're not doing it to the player, you're doing it to a creature. Then you gain 3 life. Your opponents can see it coming. They can decide how to block, what they want to put damage on, if they want to block at all, or just take the damage. You know, there's a lot of transparency here, so there really shouldn't be any tricks. But I think it's very much red-white, and it feels good. Next, we have another red-white card, Golden Dragon. 3, a red and a white for a 4/4 creature dragon with flash and flying. When Golden Dragon enters the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to each attacking creature. I like this card. I think it's interesting. It, you know, reminds me of some existing dragons that deal 1 damage to everything. This is obviously supposed to be defensive, so the white makes a lot of sense. And of course the red, that gets the damage. So yeah, I don't see anything wrong with this. I think it's pretty fair, especially as a rare. This feels like a rare card. So yeah, this gets my stamp of approval. All right, here we have a split card called Masculinity and Femininity. So Masculinity is 2 and a red for an instant. Target creature gets +3/+2 until end of turn. And it has a keyword called Toxic. That creature gains Trample until end of turn if you control a creature with Infect. Okay. Then Femininity is an instant with target creature gets +2/+3 until end of turn with Toxic. That creature gains Hexproof until end of turn if you control a creature with Infect. That's interesting. Very interesting. I'm not sure if it's necessarily good or if it's too good. Infect can be kind of a tough thing. I think the Masculinity is probably pretty strong because you can give something with Infect +3 and Trample. I think 3 mana is probably fair for that though, especially considering it's conditional. So I feel like this is an okay split card. Obviously you can only cast 1 half, not both halves. So this feels okay. All right, next we have Augur of Prosperity. 1 and a green for a 1/3 creature elf druid. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control tapped, add 1 mana of any color that land could produce. Okay, that's pretty interesting. I think that is pretty powerful. It makes, you know, those common tap lands a little better. Of course, it's limited by the fact that you have to use it in the main phase that you play that land, so it does balance a little bit there. I still feel like this is a little powerful, but I think that maybe making it cost a little more would be all right. 2 mana is pretty aggressive for that. You know, play this on turn 2, and then suddenly all of your lands are original dual lands. So I'm going to say it's a little too powerful, but I love the idea. I think it's really good and very interesting. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching this Mason Zero MTG video. If you liked my critique of some of these cards, let me know in the comments down below, and I will do another episode. I like kind of going through this subreddit casually and looking at what people have designed. There's always some very interesting ones. Some of them are good, some of them are bad, some of them are in the middle. It's a great place to get feedback and improve on your designs and kind of get inspired by what other people are doing. Anyways, thank you again. Be sure to like and subscribe if you want, and I will see you guys all in the next video. Have a great day.